You know what I'm going to do? When you come to the event, I'm going to put my hand on your knee. I'm going to rub it up your leg.
I mean, they tell me that atheists are the more rational ones. They keep telling me that. The way the atheist community reacts to things has always interested me. There's a lot to cover here, but it gets very juicy, so bear with me. So, David Worley interviewed an atheist named Lance Gregorchuk, who was promoting a convention called Anti-Theism International, which I gotta say, as a theist, love the name. But the main thing that was happening at this convention was that the most famous atheist to get caught in a sexual harassment controversy is handing a lifetime service award to the guy who recently kind of sort of maybe defended eugenics. Unprovoked, by the way. He just felt the need to put out there... Anyway. Good job. There's plenty of people that love that side of atheism, no matter how over the top they get. Dawkins certainly at one point was one of the best atheists had. And I think that's changed significantly because Dawkins is essentially a scientist that never left the angry atheist phase. And sometimes that voice is needed, but I think that other voices that have cooler heads have risen up within the atheist community that I'd rather see more of, personally, as a theist that spends an inordinate amount of time talking to atheists. I find, honestly, that it's easier to have a rational conversation with someone who isn't out for blood like Dawkins is. But let's get back to this award. They're super excited about these awards, dude. The fact that Krauss is handing an Addy to Dawkins is like the big thing that they're pushing. Like, make no mistake, this is an award show more than a convention. Let's let the remaining event organizer named John Richards explain it.
This is the Grand Hotel in Brighton, England. It's the city's best, and it's where the Anti-Theism International Awards Gala Banquet is being held on 4th of April 2020. Lawrence Krauss will be presenting Richard Dawkins with the Atty Award for a lifetime of service to rationalism. See the other awards and book your ticket at atheist-convention.com. Will you be nominated for an Atty? Early bird prices close at the end of December. ...
I love this guy so much. These awards are, in a word, worthless. But man, are they puffing them up. There's an award for Jesus Mythicist of 2020, as well as like the obvious hero-worshipping Hitchens Trophy for atheist eloquence, which is... Speaking of hero worship, there's a painting. Anyway, all that aside, look, it's clear that John Richards and Lance Gregorchuk, the known organizers of this event, or like Lance Gregorchuk, I guess, is an ex-organizer now, but we'll get to that. They're following the age-old formula of name recognition to grab attention, which there's nothing wrong with that. Have you ever wanted to meet Richard Dawkins or Lawrence Krauss? Well, come to this event. You'll also get to visit the painting, I imagine. But a controversy started to pop up, less about Dawkins and his politics or whatever, and more about Krauss. Now, Lawrence Krauss has been accused by a number of women of sexual misconduct, including assault and harassment. Now, whatever your feelings are in the Me Too movement or canceling are, this brings up two very valid questions. What is the justification for bringing in Krauss? And what harassment policy, if any, is in place for this event? If someone brings up a concern about harassment at the event, will they be listened to? Is there a system in place that can be approached? Back to David Worley. Now, Worley asked the first of these two questions on his channel to Lance Gregorchuk during his apparently drunken, according to his fellow organizer, interview with David. Now, Lance answered in probably... it was about the cringiest way possible.
I do have one pressing question for you.
Way more prepared than you were with me, because you were not prepared with me.
I still have one question for you.
Go ahead.
Is it right to platform Lawrence Krauss given his sexual assault allegations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Please, do not look at you. Look at you. Look at you. Look at me and look at you. You have never Come on. You two, we're guys. And now we're going to talk about this on the guy level. We're not going to talk about this cross level. We're going to talk about this guy level. You never got wrong signals? You never got wrong signals from a girl that you thought she likes me, she didn't like you, and you touched her?
I'm speaking specifically more like the...
I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about you personally. Come on, dude. I did it. You did it. Look, come on. We're not the best looking guys in the world.
I wouldn't be able to specifically point out a moment where I thought they were leading me on. No.
Yeah, I didn't know. Did you know? Come on. When you were 15, 16, 17, did you get the signals? I didn't get them. I have no fucking idea what girls want.
Oh, in terms of the signals, no. Typically,
Did you want to kiss?
there aren't those specific signals, no.
Did you want to touch? Seriously, dude? If you didn't get it, I didn't get it either. And Kraus, he's just in the higher Heinlein. That's all it is. They could have nailed me, you, anybody else.
Sure, I'm very questioning of how it's all happened at once for Neil deGrasse Tyson, for Kraus. Who else was it? Somebody else was. But then there's videos that come out from people like Christina Rad where they end up saying they touched my leg, they turned it around, they grabbed me.
We don't get signals from women. I mean, I'm lucky. Here's the thing. I've been married for 20 years. I got it. But beforehand, I didn't know if I should touch her leg or touch her arm, or trust me, 20 years ago, I was like you are today. Let's be honest. Seriously, you're out with the girl. Yeah, and I'm not going to Kraus or anybody else. I'm not going to do it. But seriously, you're out with a girl. I'm out with a girl. I'm not out with the girl because my wife would kill me. But if she didn't kill me, I'm out with a girl. You're out with a girl. She's nice. She's flirting her hair, and you're like, okay, how do you do this? Hello, my name is Lance. I would like to. What do you do? Hand, eye, heart. No, please. Full disclosure. We have went a little bit too far, and Kraus, I know personally, and if he put his hand on someone's shoulder, or this guy is the
specific claim was putting his hand under her skirt.
I don't know how many times I have put my hand under your skirt, but you didn't bitch once.
Now, Mr. Atheist, Shannon Q, and Rachel Oates have all covered his answer quite well.
These are the words of a man who is organising supposedly a massive atheist conference here in the UK, and I think we can all agree that what he said is not okay. I'm making this video today because I'm genuinely worried about the people attending this convention, whether it be speakers or guests. I do not believe that this is a man who will protect and care for the people at his event, and that is something that needs talking about.
This is the kind of stuff that when we talk about why are there so many women missing from the atheist movement, well, I think it's because a lot of people haven't really concerned themselves with what affect them most.
He insulted Dave, essentially. He said, this is just between me and your 400 subscribers. Essentially, no one's probably going to see this. Well, guess what? You don't understand how our community operates. We're incredibly well interconnected. If you're having an atheist convention, that's something you might want to check into, because a lot of the content creators who operate in this sphere are incredibly interconnected. And no matter how small the channel, we consider them all important, we consider them all valuable, and we provide our input to each other on just about everything. We connect through Twitter, through Facebook, through YouTube, and we talk all the time. We're on each other's channels. And if you were talking to one of us and you do something like this, just because their channel happens to be small, that doesn't mean that people aren't going to see what you have to say. And if you're an insulting, condescending asshole who makes jokes out of sexual assault allegations instead of directly addressing legitimate concerns about your conference, guess what? People are going to see you.
Links to their videos below. All of them are worth watching if you want to do like a deep dive on this convention and the effect that it's had on the atheist community. Shannon, Rachel, and Mr. Atheist are all fantastic voices within the atheist community, which I think are seriously changing it from like the debate me bro image that has dominated the community for some time. And while I do think that the atheist community has had serious problems with self-policing in the past, this is a positive example of what I want to see. And I hope that it happens more often. So after that blunder of an interview, the PR for this convention started falling apart. Him at Meta wrote an article about it describing the interview, and that got a lot of play, which made John Richards quite frustrated. He wrote this big old comment under him at Meta's article, which was itself quite poorly received.
It has Richard Dawkins in attendance, although I don't think he's actually speaking at the event. He's just been given some award and he's doing a book signing. Actually speaking at the event, you have Alex O'Connor. Aaron Ra was supposed to be there. Some guy called Stephen Law, who I don't actually know. Mariam Namazi, she was supposed to be there, and Lawrence Krauss is speaking as well. After certain events, Aaron and Mariam have dropped out because good on them for, standing up for their morals and stuff.
Better afterlife to go upon death. Also, what a tremendous amount of not addressing the issue. I contend that the rights to a mass audience and to a voice in decision-making bodies demanded by clergy are illegitimate, blah, 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 none of this matters. Are illegitimate because there is no evidence for the existence of the deities they claim to represent. He's using this as an ad. He's using this opportunity to advertise their piss-poor response to, hey, is this okay to have a person with these kinds of allegations? Of course it is. Everybody does it. It's not a big deal. It's not different. He's just more famous.
Now he's trying to change the subject. It gets me really emotional. He's trying to change the subject. He's saying, no, look, we want to talk about, religion and how terrible religion is. Stop trying to derail it with your stupid feminism and your Me Too. And we're not doing that. We're saying you are putting on an event. It doesn't matter what the event is. What is important is that everyone in attendance of your event is safe.
Links in the description. So now we have John Richards, which I just want to... The best way to introduce John Richards is just to show you how he introduced himself, because it's great.
Hi, Rachel. I haven't seen your emails, so that's why I haven't responded to them. I don't know. But I've discovered on your YouTube site that you would like a response for me, so here it is. I notice that you have a teddy in shot, so I'd like to introduce my daughter's cuddly pink pig. Say hello, Poppy.
I just want to point out also that he played this video off as his official request for Rachel to speak at his event. And he later tried to say that there was no sarcasm in this video, which I don't detect any sarcasm whatsoever. There's none. There's no sarcasm at all.
I need help. I'm not an authority on safeguarding, nor am I an expert. I only have opinions. Maybe you're an expert, or maybe you're an authority. I don't know. Or maybe you're an opinionated person like me. But it's not just the Anti-Theism International Convention, is it? I was a guest speaker at St Andrews University recently. I wasn't made aware of any safeguarding policy they may have, and I wasn't required to sign up to any standards of behavior. Afterwards, the students took me to a pub. It was full of people of all sorts. We just walked in. There was no acceptable behavior agreement check.
So Rachel and Jimmy / Mr. Atheist covered his response to Meta's blog really well. This piggy video went under the radar until a little bit later, and links to their videos are below. But I want to point out something that he put in there, just to discuss how this guy communicates, because there's a redirect in there that tries to appeal to atheist sensibilities, which seems to have worked in some cases. So here it is. He talks about how he sacked Lance. No discussion at all as to what he means by that or why this happened. He redirects to talk about his daughters. tries to say that he doesn't want the convention to be associated with the controversy around Me Too. He suggests that consent was different when he was a kid, and then he goes into his standards. He talks about how there's no connection with David Silverman, and that Lawrence Krauss is there for something other than his achievements in sexual harassment, and that Krauss's wife will be there to make sure his hands stay put. Now, at the time, I wanted to know if everyone was going to be provided with a watchful and suspicious wife. I wound up just assuming this was the rule, which I think is entirely reasonable. Anyway, he continues. He wants to know why the Anti-Theist Convention should be derailed by making sure people are safe due to this not being the subject matter of the convention. He then goes on to say that religion does bad things. And the part about religion doing bad things is especially interesting to me as a redirect, because he brings up things like child abuse and homophobia as if to remind everyone that we need to hate religion together. And he ends with a grandstanding, go ahead and argue with me if you think this is not virtuous, which is, it's a giant straw man. It's hey guys, we all hate religion. By the way, stop being concerned about things you're concerned about. Religion is bad because of these extreme examples. Let's hate religion together. Dear God, I hope this works. Now, he seems to think that for whatever reason, he can distract everyone from the actual problem by appealing to the biases of atheists and convincing them into thinking that no, we're all on the same side. But it didn't work, at least not with the names that I mentioned earlier. I mean, maybe it worked on some. At no point did human moral compass cosmic skeptics say that he was dropping from this thing. He's still going, according to his website. And a number of other speakers are still attached. But he followed this up with, well, a chance to defend himself was given to him by Shannon Q, and he promptly went over to her channel, and it was an interview.
I don't condone any sort of misogynistic behavior. I certainly wouldn't want anybody to think that they're at risk of molestation. He was pointing out that in some respects she might be, and I'm making an implication here, perhaps he was pointing out that in some respects she might be presenting herself as an object.
Found that to be something intriguing or interesting or in some way special regarding her shot and opted to use it in your own video.
Well,
directly responding to her.
I perhaps rashly assumed that she likes cuddly toys, and that she might.
Oh, John, be careful, because what you could be saying is the girl who was responding to me likes fluffy animals, so I brought one on the frame with me.
Oh, come on, that's a stretch.
It's given the allegations. Do you think that it is okay to platform somebody like Lawrence Krauss?
Well,
since that's where it all started, right?
Okay, well, you use the word allegations, and I wasn't present when the incidents occurred, and I don't suppose that you were.
So my Christmas revolves around making sure that everything's prepared for him when he gets here. That's what I'm doing on Christmas.
So are you in the kitchen?
Well, I live alone, so if I'm not in the kitchen, then people aren't going to eat. He's 8, so he doesn't cook yet. May I get the context and relevance?
Well, I was going to invite myself to your table.
Oh, well, okay. I'm not sure where to go from there. Just interesting way to end a stream where we discuss misogyny. Asking your host if she's gonna be in the kitchen. That was a solid choice. Okay, so.
But it had relevant information, such as whether or not Lance was still involved financially.
Firstly, I've sacked Lance Gregorchuk. So, starting off, he has fired Lance. I think Rachel and Shannon would all like to know, what does that mean? Do you just mean you took away his presenting gig? Because Lance was making a big deal during this interview with David Worley that he's the funder, that it's his money. He's the only one who's been brave enough to put his money where his mouth is. I mean, that's literally the argument he was making. So I'd like to know, is this still his convention? Will this be still to his financial gain if you're not going to make a correction? He's not going to come out and apologize that it takes sacking? And then I want to know why. Did you sack him because you disagreed with what he said, or optics, or what?
How much influence does he still have behind the scene? Because if he's funding it, he's going to have some influence. I want a little bit more clarification about this and to what extent Lance is involved.
What does it mean when you say Lance is fired? Does that mean that he's no longer in any way involved in the event itself and he's completely severed ties with the event? Or does that mean he no longer holds a title?
He no longer has any responsibility within the organization.
So he is still involved with the event in some capacity?
No.
Oh, so he has utterly no involvement, not funding, not in any way organization. Is he going to be attending the event? He's no longer providing any funds for the event?
Well, I'm not at liberty to reveal the identity of my sponsors.
Okay.
And whether or not Lance was even going to be there.
What I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that he would still be welcome at the event. He's not barred from attendance.
He's not barred from attendance,
Okay.
but of course, everyone who attends the event, and that includes people who have bought tickets, that includes staff at the events, that includes the speakers at the event, and all the guests at the event, will have to sign our safeguard policy.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna go into the safeguard policy too. I actually have it.
I think my favorite part is when he uses the creationist "were you there" response to the Lawrence Krauss question, just completing the meme. At the time of the interview, there was a discussion about the safeguarding policy of the event. At the time, it was incomplete, and John did not send the recently updated version to Shannon despite the interview being on this subject. You'd think that Richards would have sent that ahead of time, but instead he did this.
Well, we have, I think if you read further down the safeguarding policy, you'll see
That was literally all I could find yesterday. Is there more today than there was yesterday?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
there's additional paragraphs.
That was it yesterday.
All right, no, sorry, you're out of date.
About a date. Yes, that was almost 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
He also seemed to be making some excuses about how most institutions don't have such policies. Shannon caught on to this fairly quickly and addressed it.
It was a very enjoyable experience, and afterwards the students took me to the pub.
Yeah.
We just walked in. It was full of people, all different sorts of people, different ethnicities, different ages, different sexes. And I'm not saying just the two,
Right.
And the thing that could be worrying is that there was no requirement to check any behavior policy, to accept any standards of how to behave. There was no safeguarding policy which we had to tick on the way in.
No, because most safeguarding policies don't operate like that. Generally, the onus is on the person who's entering the premises to make sure that they're aware of the regulations that premises operates under. Otherwise, it would be a really onerous task to expect everybody to sign a waiver before they enter a building. However, the people that operate that building are within their rights, so long as they have a policy that's available to essentially force people in the premises to adhere to that policy or be ejected from the premises. I was a bartender for a very long time. So, for example, if somebody became too inebriated, that was against the policy that we had. We would cut them off, and if they became belligerent, we would ask them to remove themselves from the space. That's a form of safeguarding policy, the same with inappropriate touching.
Now, currently, there exists a safeguarding policy on protection and harassment for the event. And it's not bad, it's actually quite good. But the issue doesn't really stop there. It's still an issue of the massive amount of arm twisting that it took to get to this point. And that suggests that this policy may not be taken seriously by those running the event. And the question comes as to whether or not you'd want to support these people. I use plural because I don't accept for a minute that Lance isn't involved with the funding, and that he isn't the financial beneficiary of this event. And the main reason why I don't accept that is because it wasn't explicitly stated when explicitly asked. Beyond that, it's a little expensive. Check out these tickets, and keep in mind that's British pounds, which are currently worth about $1.30. But, capitalism and all. That was it for a period of time, until recently. They did a pretty good job staying under the radar, even with the controversy around David Silverman being hired at Atheist Alliance International, and then subsequently resigning in December. But Remember that whole bit about David, Bernie's not Jewish because he's an atheist Silverman having nothing to do with the convention? That seems to have changed a little bit. But first, let's point something out. John Richards is perfectly happy to remove people from the nomination pool if he thinks that they are, for whatever reason, undeserving. Here is correspondence from John Richards to David Worley, saying that he's not prepared to accept his nomination for an award until David has given him a fair hearing. And so they've removed David Worley from this section, despite having this, fan voting standard and fan nominations being crowdsourced from the internet. It's apparent that he's attempting to manipulate an interview out of David Worley. Now, I don't know why he would want this. He doesn't interview well. But it does seem that this guy has a sense of entitlement about PR, despite being bad at PR. Here's an example of his demand that he said to him at Meta after he posted his article on the controversy. This is a trend, not an exception. But the interesting part is that what we can glean from this is that John Richards directly accepts or rejects nominations for awards, which makes the case of David Silverman particularly interesting, because David Silverman has been nominated for 2 awards, including Atheist of the Year. Is John Richards unaware of the controversy around David Silverman's various sexual assault allegations? Because this is beginning to look like a prerequisite.
Because it also looks like it's to do with a cover-up. And that's the image that we are getting from John, despite his claims of cleaning up his image and the image of the conference itself. This is an event where Lawrence Krauss gets to talk. David Silverman is up for Atheist of the Year, but I am too deplorable to be nominated.
The icing on the cake here is that David Silverman was nominated for Atheist of the Year for 2020 and Atheist Author of 2020, which is odd because Silverman hasn't really done anything for atheism in 2019 or 2020. The biggest claim to fame that he has in that time span is trying to sue American Atheists and Matt Dillahunty in a suit that got dropped for being generally crap. But that's not the reason why he's nominated. The stated reasons for his nominations are holding Reason Rally in 2012 and 2016, and he's nominated for Atheist Author of the Year for writing Fighting God, published in 2015. So I guess the requirements for being nominated for Atheist of the Year is to do something within the past decade, or spend the entire year whinging on the internet about how you got fired, get a new job, and then get forced to resign from that new job months later. Atheist of the Year. Now, the nominations were apparently crowdsourced, but there's something a little fishy here. It seems a little ridiculous that someone would nominate Silverman for Atheist of the Year in 2020 or Atheist Author of the Year in 2020 for things that he did in 2012, 2015, and 2016. And furthermore, after that crowdsourced nomination, that it would make it onto the site. But Silverman's job that he was given amongst his whinging was at AAI, Atheist Alliance International. And guess who's a major player in Atheist Alliance International? Oh, well, that's certainly interesting, isn't it? It's hard to say that someone who's a major player in the organization at which Silverman was hired in the midst of a controversy and then resigned in the midst of another separate controversy about a month later is unaware of these happenings. And I'll link a playlist from lawyer-turned-YouTuber Nate Brody about the David Silverman case and lawsuit. But whatever your opinion is on that whole saga, nothing came of Silverman's actions that warrants a nomination for Atheist of the Year. The effect of this was a massive, however quiet, falling out. Whereas before it seemed to be fine to just not go, now it seems that people don't even want their names associated with any of it. Jim Hall of Atheist Edge has asked to be removed from the site's award list. Seth Andrews and Matt Dillahunty, too, have asked to be removed, and they are no longer on the site. Aaron Ra has asked to be removed as speaker, but for whatever reason was not removed as an award nominee by extension, and is still on the website. Mariam Namazi, as well, removed herself as speaker fairly early on in this process. But, for whatever reason, Cosmic Skeptic is still involved in speaking there. I'm not really sure why. Morality seems to be a really heavy concern of his. I'm unaware of what his argument is for speaking at this event. It's possible that he's unaware. However, it's unlikely given that his friend Rationality Rules is speaking at a counter event run by David Worley. But whatever the case, I'd advise anyone that's still associated with this event to bail. This event doesn't deserve the support of the atheist community. It is, to say the very least, unprofessional. And it can be hard to turn down recognition or speak out on these subjects, but I applaud those within the atheist community who have done so. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. This has been an interesting little journey so far, and I'm curious to see where it leads. The event itself hasn't even happened yet, and yet here we are. But I'm sure that you've got opinions, so let me know what they are. My position is someone who is an outsider in the atheist community, being a theist and all, and definitely not an atheist. And yet I still know and communicate with a lot of people within it. And I've been watching this come to a boil over the past few months and decided to speak up and say something about it. But with that, hail to my patrons for making this content possible. It's always good to have people at your back. And with that, like, subscribe, and remember to find a way or make one.